Romance novels promise bright mornings and brave hearts. But when we peek behind the gilded pages of historical love, we meet shadows that linger long after the last kiss. The quick allure of a candlelit vow can hide centuries of power, pressure, and unspoken fear. In the well-loved stories we adore, the fairy tale often glosses over the price paid by those who stood at the margins of history. The women who whispered hopes into the gaslight and learned to endure. Tonight we shine a careful light on that darker terrain, not to sour the joy we chase, but to honor the resilience that makes true love possible. What you'll hear are three threads that commonly thread through historical romance. Threads that felt heavy enough to bend the stories themselves. First, the weight of dynastic loyalty. In many eras, marriages were not about two people choosing each other, but about alliances and property, empires and estates. Love could bloom, but it often blossomed in a garden built by someone else's rules. These unions gave shield and status to families, but sometimes left the hearts inside them feeling small, boxed, or forgotten. Second, the language of consent and voice, which in many centuries was a luxury not granted to every partner in the room. A shadow falls over scenes where a heroine's yes or no is muted by tradition, a guardian's demand, or a lover's honor, leaving a mark that readers sense even when the surface sparkles. And third, the echo of empire and empire's debt, where romance travels through contested lands, stolen stories, and the harm done to those who carried history in their blood but not in their power. In the glow of these shadows, we still find light. The darkest corners of historical romance are not the end of the road but the place where courage begins to hum. A heroine who learns to speak her truth, a hero who dares to listen. A shared vow that grows from honest confession rather than mere convenience, that is where real warmth gathers. The beauty of a romance that stands up to history is that it invites us to see both the struggle and the possibility. To witness a love that doesn't erase pain but chooses healing anyway. Let me tell you a slow-burning moment that many readers recognize, even if it's hidden in a scene you've read 100 times. A letter arrives, aged and careful, its ink a little faded, its promises clear as dawn. The letter seems to seal a future. Yet the real turning is in the space between lines, the tremor and a sigh. The pause before a truth is spoken aloud. In those breaths, we glimpse a softer power. Two people deciding to unlearn the myths sold to them and instead carve a path that belongs to both of them. It isn't fireworks, it's a steady flame, the kind you can trust when storms arrive. The second thread is the cost of social expectation. Many historical romances use the pressure of duty as a backdrop. And sometimes the backdrop steals the show. We watch as a heroine is asked to abandon a dream she guards in secret. Not because the dream is foolish, but because it risks breaking the chain that holds a family together. The romance, from this vantage, becomes a negotiation between desire and responsibility. A careful choreography of respect and risk. When the author dares to reveal how these tensions shape a couple's decisions, the story shifts from a fairy tale trap into a living, breathing partnership defined by choice, not chance. Yet even in the sternest rooms of history, soft places exist. There are moments when tenderness threads through the stiffness of etiquette. When a shared glance across a crowded ballroom carries a vow more powerful than any spoken line. The darker portraits of love remind us that romance is not just fire and thunder, but also weather and seasons, the patience to endure heat and frost, the courage to rebuild after a fault line of words, the willingness to grow beyond the versions of ourselves our world tried to pin on us. Those are the scenes that teach resilience. That teach us that a real happy ending isn't a door slammed shut, but a door opened with both people stepping through together. The third thread invites a gentler, but equally important, truth. History can be reclaimed through two honest voices choosing to rewrite the pages. When a couple discovers a shared memory that the era tried to erase, they do more than fall in love. They reframe history in a way that honors risk, sacrifice, and consent. The room grows warmer as they acknowledge what was long hidden, the pain of a voice that suffered. The courage it takes to be seen. The trust that forms when one partner stops rescuing the other and instead stands beside them. The romance then becomes not a rescue mission, but a partnership. Two people who walk forward even when the path is uneven. Who lift each other when the weight becomes too heavy to bear alone. This is the kind of romance that feels earned, not manufactured. The kind that invites us to examine our own desires for a moment and then decide how we want to love. It gives permission to celebrate tenderness without pretending the shadows don't exist. It asks us to notice the quiet acts, the letters kept. The conversations held late into the night. The memory shared not to conjure pity but to remind the couple why their bond matters enough to fight for. And in that moment, the dark side ceases to be a boundary line and becomes a map. A map to navigate the complexities of love in a world that often moves too quickly, a map toward compassion, mutual respect. And a future that could include a true, lasting happy ending. So if you're here because you love romance with depth, you're not alone. We crave stories that respect the past while offering a brighter, more truthful path forward. We want romances that acknowledge pain and still choose hope. We want couples who discover that strength doesn't lie in overpowering the other but in choosing to be precisely who they are together, day after day. Even when the pages feel heavy. That is the heart of the darker side revealed. It is not a verdict against love, but a promise that love can survive when honesty, empathy, and courage hold the pen. As you listen, you may recognize a whisper of your own story. Perhaps you've carried a version of history that told you romance, or that a life of love must be simple and easy. The truth these narratives offer is more generous. Love is not a flawless fairy tale, but a living practice. It grows in the soil of truth, watered by choices that reflect who we are and who we want to become. And sometimes, the most luminous endings arrive when two people have learned to say the difficult thing to the person who matters most. Then choose to walk forward anyway, together. If you found a thread here that echoed with your heart, let it linger with you. Share in the comments which shadow felt closest to your own experience of love. Which moment of honesty surprised you? And what a modern version of a historical romance would look like for you. I believe in the power of stories that do more than entertain. I believe they can rewire fear into faith, cynicism into curiosity, and longing into a durable, radiant hope. Tonight, let us carry that hope gently. And let it lead us to the kind of love that not only endures but heals. Thank you for spending this time with me. For listening to the truth beneath the shimmer. And for choosing to believe that romance in any era can be a force for kindness, growth, and real happiness. Yet the conversation doesn't end with a single sigh of relief. The darker shadows invite us to listen longer. To honor the people who woke up in their era and still chose to be brave. When a heroine names what hurts. When a hero accepts that pride can bend to mercy. The romance becomes not an escape but a bridge. We learn that courage isn't loud, it's steady. Like a lantern carried through a long corridor. Guiding two hearts toward a shared dawn. That shift matters for readers who feel unseen in their own lives. It says, your voice, your past can be carried forward. And your future can hold both truth and tenderness. In the historical rooms of dust and decree, the couple chooses to shed inherited masks. They decide to grow into a more generous version of themselves, and in doing so, they keep faith with the love that brought them together. History's dark bits have a cost, and naming it is not bitterness, it is care. It makes the light feel earned, not accidental. And when the page turns, we carry with us a sense that every romance worth remembering learned to endure, to listen, to ask better questions, and to choose honesty over convenience. If a modern romance can borrow that patient courage, it can heal a little more of the world. Thank you for staying with me as we trace these lines. For letting stories reveal not only the dreams but the responsibilities that accompany them. May your own journey with love be guided by that same tenderness, and may you discover, in every era, the steady promise that your heart is enough to begin again and again with someone who sees you fully. Let these truths travel with you as you turn the page. Hope stays bright,